The young man had just woken up only to find a girl with impressively generous curves sitting right on top of him. Terrified yet stunned, he wondered who she was and how she had gotten into his room. As if reading his mind, the girl leaned in closer, her ample chest pressing firmly against Ash's. "My name is Navi, a spirit born because of you. Remember this, for one day I will come to find you." Before Ash could process any of it, he suddenly jolted awake, letting out a piercing scream before realizing it had all been just a dream. If only everything had been real, that would have been absolutely perfect. He would never have to worry about dying alone with his little buddy rusting away from years of loneliness. Ash was currently a student at the Dragon Training Academy. Here, everyone had their own dragon companion for battle, known as a pal. Strangely enough, while every student received their own pal upon entering the academy, Ash was a special case. His pal was like a ghost, always spoken of but never seen. Because of this, whenever Ash showed up at school, more than a few people were surprised, then puzzled as to how someone without a dragon companion could have passed the first-year examination. Truly bizarre. On top of that, Ash was also famous for being able to ride other people's dragons, earning him the reputation of a notorious troublemaker. I wonder if his dragon is just as much of a mess as he is. The moment those words reached his ears, Ash wanted to charge over and punch the guy square in the face. If his best friend Raymond hadn't held him back, that student would have been lucky not to get kicked right in the family jewels. Ash was usually quite gentle, but the second anyone brought up his absent pal, he was ready to throw hands. Max also reminded Ash that he was no longer a freshman and should act accordingly. Only then did the situation settle down. Everyone filed into class and the lesson began as usual. The teacher up front explained everything about pals, the most fundamental knowledge any dragon rider needed to know. Most importantly, a dragon only allows its one true master to mount and command it in battle. Unless you want a dragon to spit a lethal glob of saliva at you, don't go around acting like you own someone else's dragon. After class ended, the two of them heard a girl shouting at three classmates chatting by the doorway. That was Princess Sylvia, an incredibly arrogant person with a condescending attitude toward everyone she encountered. Take what just happened. Instead of politely asking them to step aside, Sylvia screamed in their faces as if they had committed a grave offense, then walked away without feeling the slightest bit out of line. Because of countless similar incidents, everyone at the academy knew Sylvia was insufferably haughty and avoided her like the plague. On their way, the two also ran into Rebecca, the student council president. In stark contrast to her junior Sylvia, she was adored by everyone. The moment Raymond laid eyes on her, he was practically drooling. Even a biblical flood would be nothing compared to the waterworks coming from this guy. Raymond swore he would sacrifice every last year of his remaining life if it meant getting a date with Rebecca, even if it meant dying young. Rebecca suddenly glanced in their direction as if she had heard what he said. Ash, being the smart one, dodged out of the way first. Bros share blessings together, but when trouble comes, you're on your own, buddy. I don't know anything. Then came the practical exam, testing the ability to command and lead combat maneuvers on Dragonback. Raymond lent Ash his dragon. The dragon, clearly used to this by now, let Ash climb on without any fuss. The moment the instructor's voice rang out, everyone facing off charged into fierce battle. The most impressive of all was Sylvia's white dragon. It soared into the sky and unleashed magical bombardments, leaving its opponent with no choice but to block defensively. The performance, though still a bit raw, was genuinely not bad at all. On Ash's side, he was also commanding his dragon in intense combat, watching his battle companion dodge and strike effectively one move after another. Ash could not contain the excitement surging inside him. At the most heated moment of the fight, Ash commanded his dragon to leap into the air to dodge, only to accidentally collide with Sylvia. The unexpected mishap made everyone extremely worried. Fortunately, both of them managed to calm their dragons down before the creatures went berserk. The instructor was a bit on edge after that stunt, but since nothing serious happened, it was let go. However, Sylvia unexpectedly walked up and slapped Ash across the face. She scolded him, asking if he was fooling around, and whether he had any idea how dangerous that was. Ash desperately wanted to explain that it was just an accident, but she called him a fool, saying his dragon was probably just like its master and might have died ages ago. Hearing that, Ash completely lost his cool and wanted to rush forward and kick her right in the face. Raymond grabbed him just in time before he could act on the impulse. After a heated back and forth, Ash and the girl made a wager. If he won at the upcoming Aries festival, Sylvia would apologize. If not, then so be it. Ash agreed without hesitation. Though he didn't have a dragon of his own yet, he had absolute confidence in his fighting skills and his ability to command one. The night before the official match, Ash dreamed of Navi again. In the dream, she harassed him repeatedly, leaving Ash completely clueless about how to deal with her. He couldn't move his body even the slightest bit, while she freely ran her hands all over him with a body that couldn't have been more seductive. If Ash could have moved even a finger, he would not have hesitated to give her a thorough punishment she wouldn't soon forget. Navi suddenly told Ash that since today was the last time the two of them would meet, she was going to mess with him to the fullest. Just as Navi reached down to pull out his little soldier, Ash woke up. He quickly got ready and changed, then gathered with everyone at the Academy's main square. Up on stage, Rebecca gave a few words of encouragement to the students before the competition began. To make the match more exciting and worth watching, she announced that the winner would get a chance to go on a date with her. The moment those words left her lips, the entire stadium erupted in wild cheering. Boys and girls alike were ecstatic as if they had struck gold. Raymond immediately wanted to leap off the stands to reclaim his dragon. Ash, step aside and let me compete. That said, when the match actually started, Ash was still the one riding the dragon. The competition was quite unfair for those whose pals were ground types. Winged dragons could easily leave them behind whenever they pleased. Case in point, Ash had to run for a while before catching up to Sylvia, and not because he was fast, but because up ahead, a group of people who didn't appreciate her arrogant attitude had blocked the tunnel. The race rules didn't prohibit teaming up or group tactics, so Sylvia couldn't say a word, but Ash didn't like the sight before him either. If it's a competition, it should be played fair and square. So Ash charged forward. Seeing him coming, the blockers didn't want their dragon stolen, so they scattered out of the way. The narrow tunnel caused 3 dragons to crash into each other and tumble down simultaneously. The path ahead opened up, giving Sylvia the chance to surge forward. The road ahead was still quite long and full of challenges. Many sections required contestants to cross mountains and wade through rivers. Without a dragon, a person would need at least a full day to get through. Eventually, Ash stopped chasing after Sylvia's shadow. This was an uneven race for ground dragons. Just then, the bushes nearby rustled. Ash thought it might be someone who had dropped out, so he went over to check if they needed help. Ash walked for a bit until he came across an Imperial warship with a very mysterious figure on board. The man wore a mask and could tell with just a single glance that Ash's dragon was still very young. A truly unusual case indeed. Ash desperately wanted to know how the man could see through this. A whip suddenly lashed out at him. If Ash hadn't dodged, it would have been all over. Sensing the danger, he turned and ran. The girl who had attacked showed no intention of giving up and chased after him. When Ash tripped and fell, she drew her blade and brought it down without hesitation. However, when she saw Ash throw his arm up to block, the female warrior froze, then inexplicably backed away. Ash stood up, wondering what she was planning, when a small section of the cliff where the girl was standing suddenly crumbled. As she was about to fall, he rushed forward and grabbed her hand to pull her up, only to put himself in the position of falling instead. Ash couldn't understand why he was this stupid. An ordinary person couldn't possibly be this dumb. Just as he hopelessly thought his life was over, a flash of light burst forth. When he opened his eyes, there was a dragon egg before him. Ash touched the egg and it cracked open, revealing a little girl who looked remarkably like Navi. The little one didn't have a single thread of clothing on her, fast asleep and so deeply that she didn't wake even as Ash picked her up. He wondered if this was his pal, but if so, why was she a human and not a dragon like everyone else's? A flood of questions filled his mind with no answers in sight as he stared at the little girl in his arms. Good thing this was set in a fantasy world and not somewhere the authorities would come knocking for staring at a child too long. But forget the authorities. A fist came flying out of nowhere and sent Ash hurtling a considerable distance. It was none other than the mysterious little girl herself. She screamed a warning that staring at someone while they slept was an incredibly rude thing to do. What, do you want me to rip up a calendar and use it to wipe your butt or something? Stop staring. Ash didn't care about that. What kind of kid is as strong as a bull? Are you even human? Of course not. No mere human could ever match a noble dragon like me. Hearing that, Ash was overjoyed. I'm your master, you know. I am your master. A noble dragon would never serve a lowly human. Ash was dumbfounded by her response, but decided to just bring her home first and figure the rest out later. The moment they stepped into Ash's room, The little one complained about how shabby it was, saying the bed was too small for both of them to sleep. She then charged straight for the bed and flopped down like she owned the place. Ash really wanted to know where he was supposed to sleep tonight. On the floor, obviously. No noble dragon sleeps on the ground. He absolutely could not accept this attitude or these ridiculous demands that showed zero respect for her dragon trainer. But to avoid the luxury of 3 meals a day courtesy of the state behind bars, he swallowed his pride in his own room. Just when he thought things would end there, the little one crawled out from under the blanket in the middle of the night. At first, Ash thought she was sleepwalking and let her do as she pleased. But when she started talking and her actions crossed every boundary imaginable, Ash realized she was fully conscious and was trying to take his first time. He resisted helplessly. He hoped that if any officer of the law were watching, they would kindly look the other way because it felt too good. The next morning, there was a knock on the door. It was the student council, who had received word that Ash finally had a pal and came to investigate. The moment they walked in, saw the little girl, and noticed the small bruises on Ash's body, their minds immediately went to the worst possible scenario. Someone call the police and arrest this guy right now. He's done unspeakable things to someone's child. Rebecca, standing beside them, glanced at the scene and noticed the room was clearly divided into 2 separate sleeping areas, so she knew nothing had happened. She then informed Ash that this was an unprecedented case. The Academy had already sent a request for assistance to Professor Cornwell, an expert with years of experience in identifying and evaluating dragon species. In addition, Rebecca had already bought a set of clothes, put these on her, and then come to school to pick up a small stipend. It's not much, but it should be enough to buy some basic necessities for the little dragon girl. Though Ash's pal was still young, her appearance was undeniably adorable and charming. Even before reaching her growth phase, she possessed a beauty that made people on the street turn their heads every time she walked by. The little one spotted a cute bakery and demanded Ash buy her something. The moment she took her first bite, strange reactions took over her body. She lost control and lunged toward Ash, making expressions and movements that were extremely suggestive. Just when things were about to go past the point of no return, Sylvia's voice cut through. "I never expected you to be so shameless, doing such indecent things in public." Right at that moment, the little dragon girl sneezed, and the gust of wind from it blew Sylvia's skirt up. Ash caught a glimpse of light blue underwear beneath her short skirt. He stood there stunned for a second before a thunderous fist slammed straight into his face. After some explaining, they finally figured out that the pastry had contained a stimulant similar to alcohol. If a child ate it, they would get drunk, which was exactly what had happened to the little one. After sobering her up, Sylvia explained that she hadn't come looking for a fight, but to apologize for what she had said before the tournament. When Ash asked what exactly she meant, she got a little flustered and then turned around and walked away. Watching her leave, Ash quietly thought to himself that it would be nice if she were always this pleasant. The two continued shopping. When they finally headed out, the little dragon girl wanted to eat more of the alcoholic pastry. Ash immediately refused. "Didn't you almost get wasted just now?" Also, speaking of which, it seemed like his pal still didn't have a name. The little one was quite bothered by this too. Ash recalled the name Eco, something he had wanted to name his pal for a very long time. It was the name that the very first dragon trainer had given to her companion. The little girl loved the name, and with that, the mark on Ash's hand glowed with a flash of light, signifying that the two had formed a connection through the astral energy flow, officially establishing a symbiotic bond. Now that she had a name, Eco went into the restroom to wash her face and fix her hair. But strangely, she had been gone for far too long without coming out. From a distance, Sylvia saw Ash staring at the women's restroom and yelled a warning that if he was being a pervert, she would punch him in the face. When she learned that Eco had gone in a long time ago and hadn't come out, her attendant went inside to check but found no one. All she found was a handkerchief dusted with mystic incense. It seemed someone had kidnapped Ash's pal. Ash was ready to tear the entire academy apart to find her. Thankfully, Sylvia stopped him and guided him to use the sacred dragon mark on his arm to focus on Eco and channel the astral flow. "Just follow it, and you'll find her." The three of them arrived at an area that appeared to be abandoned. Outside stood bizarre stone formations. Sylvia studied them closely until Ash managed to break through the door and get inside. The astral flow had truly worked, because inside, Eco was strapped to a surgical table. The person before them was a woman with 3 heads. The moment she had seen Eco and learned about a dragon in human form, Her curiosity had been impossible to contain. What kind of mysterious creature could this possibly be? That curiosity drove her to the point where, even knowing that dissecting someone else's pal was against the law, she went ahead anyway. Just as the blade was about to descend, everyone arrived outside. One would have expected a battle to break out, but the woman had already set up a device to isolate them from the outside world. Those very stones Sylvia had noticed. What's more, this woman turned out to be none other than Professor Angela Cornwell, the very expert the Academy had requested. Right after introducing herself, she summoned a magic circle that knocked both Sylvia and her companion unconscious. Ash struggled to resist. His pal had just been born. He couldn't let Angela do whatever she pleased. But the moment the magic intensified, Ash collapsed. Seeing this, Eiko screamed in fury. The sacred dragon mark on his arm flared with light, and Ash immediately regained consciousness. He swung his arm and a massive gust of wind surged toward Angela, shattering the device sustaining her magic, then destroying the restraints holding Eiko. Freed at last, the little one ran to Ash and clung to him in fear. But when he hugged her back, she punched him so hard he nearly saw his ancestors waving him over to the other side. What a ferocious little creature. Just when they thought the ordeal was over, the very next morning when they walked into class, they received the news that Angela was their new subject teacher. In addition, Rebecca called Ash over to the classroom, pressing herself close to him in a posture that no red-blooded young man could possibly withstand. She looked like she was about to devour him alive. But in truth, she simply wanted to invite him to join the student council. Rebecca knew that in the forest, he had encountered mysterious and dangerous individuals. They were spies from the Empire. Years ago, the kingdom and the Empire had fought an earth-shattering war. Although the battle had long since ended, the situation had never improved. The Empire continued to seek ways to attack the kingdom, both in the open and from the shadows. Anselivan Academy had been mistakenly identified by the enemy as a military training ground, and had been targeted on multiple occasions. Rebecca wanted Ash to join the student council, leveraging his ability to ride any dragon to bolster their strength and protect the academy. This was the true purpose of today's meeting. Just as Ash was carefully considering the matter, a level 2 alarm blared throughout the academy. Everyone expected an enemy attack, but it turned out to be nothing more than a dragon that had broken loose and gone out of control. Strangely enough, Princess Sylvia was riding on top of it. How could she not know that was an incredibly dangerous thing to do? Ash didn't understand, but Rebecca immediately guessed Sylvia's intention to compete with him. Though Sylvia was truly exceptional and stood at the top in every regard, when it came to riding any dragon, no one could match Ash. To prevent casualties or the dragon from being seriously injured, Rebecca leaped down and shouted to summon her own dragon. From within the magic circle, a colossal dragon materialized. It was immensely majestic and imposing, vastly different from any dragon that had appeared before. Sylvia's dragon couldn't even compare. Next, Rebecca cast another spell. A magic circle formed beneath the dragon's head and slowly moved upward along her body. Her clothes and school uniform were replaced by an arch, a battle armor personally designed by a dragon for its master as a sign of acknowledgement. With her overwhelming power, Rebecca easily subdued the rogue dragon, pinning it flat on the ground. The incident was resolved flawlessly without a single casualty. Ash kept replaying that scene in his mind, completely dazed, wondering when he would ever have an arch of his own. Eiko was talking to him, but he wasn't listening, so she pinched his ear painfully hard. According to her knowledge, every arch currently in existence was passed down through the inherited memories of each dragon, not custom designed for their master. Ash eagerly asked if she could design one exclusively for him. The moment he said this, Eiko seemed furious. He then remembered that when a dragon agrees to create a personal arch for its master, it means the dragon swears eternal loyalty, never to abandon or betray them. As soon as the words left his mouth, Eiko stomped on his foot. Why should I, the master, make armor for a slave? It goes against the natural order. Eiko had just finished her rant when Rebecca and Sylvia arrived, inviting them both to a restaurant. Thanks to the student council's privileges, everyone could feast like royalty at this lavish table without spending a single coin. While Eiko was eagerly eyeing the delicious dishes on the table, elsewhere, the two mysterious figures Ash had encountered in the forest were standing atop a tall building, surveying the city. This place is truly peaceful. Dragons are no longer treated as tools of war. But that didn't mean it would stay that way. The man drew a sword, and with an incantation, a bolt of lightning shot from its blade straight into the sky. At that very moment, Iko also sensed something was wrong. They rushed outside. From the pitch-black clouds blanketing the sky, a colossal monster suddenly appeared. Whether it was a dragon or something else entirely was unclear, but it was enormous. The creature was grotesque beyond belief, its skin seemingly decomposing and dripping onto the ground. Iko, seeing it wreaking havoc on the city, marched up and started hurling insults at it. The result was predictable. The monster snatched her up with ease. Then it gathered energy and fired a beam of light into the residential district. A massive explosion tore through the area, destroying buildings in every direction. From within the explosion, Rebecca's silhouette emerged. She had entered combat mode to minimize the damage from the blast. From her magic circle, she summoned a gigantic lance and hurled it straight at the monster. It pierced through layer after layer of its defenses, struggling fiercely against the final barrier before shattering the creature's head. But instead of falling, the destroyed head slowly regenerated. Then it resumed its bombardment in every direction. Knowing this would be a brutal fight, Rebecca told Ash to take the princess and get out of there immediately. Sylvia had been so terrified by what she'd witnessed that she had lost all composure. No matter how many times he called her name, she wouldn't respond. Ash had no choice but to slap her across the face. When Sylvia came to, he told her to summon her dragon so he could try riding it. It was an extremely dangerous move, but they had no other choice, because the monster had pulled Iko into its belly. The monstrous creature was utterly depraved, groping Iko all over her body. Just at the most critical moment, Iko was pulled into a strange dimension, where she met Navi, who introduced herself as Iko's guide during the initial phase. This was the Dragon Armor Forge, where battle armors were born. Navi showed Iko the scene outside, where Ash was desperately trying to rescue her. Despite being knocked off the dragon repeatedly and his body pushed to complete exhaustion, Ash never gave up. Even without knowing Iko's condition, the sacred dragon mark told him she was still alive. As long as that was true, he would stop at nothing to save her. Iko was deeply moved by what she saw. Time was running out, so designing a custom battle armor from scratch was out of the question. But choosing a pre-made set was far too dangerous. So Iko pieced together existing parts to create a reasonably solid arch for Ash. Outside, just as Ash had been knocked off the dragon's back and was about to be hit by the monster's devastating energy beam, his entire body burst with light. A massive explosion erupted around him, but when the dust settled, he bore not a single scratch. On the contrary, his entire body was now clad in an arch, stunning everyone. He entered a heightened state and leaped onto the white dragon's back. Then from there jumped onto the monster's back, attempting to ride it. "I don't know what the hell you are, but if you're a dragon, then Ash can ride you." He commandeered the creature and sent it soaring into the sky. In that brief moment of connection, Ash caught a glimpse of the monster's past, fighting side by side with its former master. The creature's only wish now was to be set free. And so Ash summoned a massive magic circle. From within it, an enormous greatsword appeared. Ash seized it and brought it down in a single devastating strike. Golden light completely purified the dragon's corrupted body, then scattered the dark clouds and returned the radiant sky to the city. Just like that, an apocalyptic battle capable of leveling an entire city was brought to an end. After the undead dragon attack, the three of them, Iko, Sylvia, and Ash, officially joined the student council and made their public debut. Sylvia had nothing to worry about. With royal elegance running through her veins, she delivered a speech so commanding that no one dared utter a single word. When it was Ash's turn, things got a little awkward. He never imagined that someone famous for being a troublemaker would one day become a member of the student council overseeing everyone else. He simply said he would do his best and hoped everyone would support him going forward. The audience found his speech rather underwhelming and didn't clap. Thankfully, Raymond was down below and knew how to hype up the crowd, so Ash managed to get through it just fine. Finally came Iko, a pal in human form. Since Iko was essentially useless yet ate an enormous amount, her role was nothing more than a mascot. Iko raised both hands and let out a roar, trying to be intimidating. But no one in the audience was the least bit scared, because her roar carried absolutely zero threat. If anything, it was adorable. Embarrassed by the crowd's laughter, Iko was furious. Unable to do anything to them, she turned around and unleashed a verbal tirade on Ash instead to vent her frustration. Ash's first task as a student council member was to take down unauthorized notices posted around the school. The most notable was a recruitment poster for the Silver Knight fan club, dedicated to a rather famous dragon rider from a novel. But their admiration wasn't directed at that fictional character. It was aimed at Ash, the mysterious hero who had slain the undead dragon. Since no one knew who he was, they had created a codename first and were working to uncover his true identity. When they entered the classroom, Raymond saw how adorable Eiko was and couldn't resist patting her on the head. He even floated the idea of swapping pals with Ash, but before he could finish his sentence, a fist sent him flying backward. Truly a man with a gift for stirring up trouble and then getting punched for it. Right at that moment, Jessica, the president of the Silver Knight Club, walked into the classroom with a crowd of girls trailing behind her. Their goal was simple: to interrogate whether anyone in this class had actually been at the scene, witnessed the battle, and knew the hero's identity. Sylvia felt they were being absurdly excessive and told them to leave. Jessica might have been intimidated if Sylvia had pulled rank as a princess of the kingdom. But Sylvia didn't like doing that and instead invoked her authority as a member of the student council's executive board. This didn't faze Jessica one bit. Raymond also advised Ash's group not to mess with this lunatic. Word on the street was that she came from an old noble family that had long since fallen from grace. Jessica spoke up again, informing everyone that the Silver Knight Club's noble goal was nothing other than to bear the hero's children. The declaration left the entire room in stunned silence. Eiko and Sylvia were ready to charge up and punch her concrete thick face, but the club's vice president intervened first. The club's rules required maintaining purity toward their idol. No matter how badly anyone's biological clock was ticking, such words were absolutely unacceptable. Furthermore, the vice president informed Jessica that Sylvia had been present at the battle and knew who Silver Knight truly was. Jessica immediately began pressuring her. Just then, Rebecca appeared and ordered Jessica to get out of the classroom immediately. Class was about to start, but even the student council president couldn't intimidate Jessica. She instead demanded that Rebecca reveal the hero's identity right then and there. In the end, Rebecca had to play her final card to force Jessica into a reluctant retreat. She also revealed to everyone the secret weapon she had used: sensitive information. Jessica was not the noblewoman everyone believed her to be. In fact, her family served under Rebecca's household. Jessica was actually quite a good person at heart, but her desperate desire to become a true noble had driven her half mad. Everyone was warned not to provoke her either, because getting bitten would just mean spending money on a rabies shot. However, if Jessica were to discover who Silver Knight really was, she could potentially become a true noble in the future. In a kingdom built on dragon knights, reaching the level of Arch was a truly monumental milestone. Anyone wielding that kind of power could easily be granted a noble title. If Jessica ever found out that Ash was the hero of that battle, she would undoubtedly stop at nothing to harvest his seed. Sylvia's face turned bright red hearing this. That was exactly why Ash needed to be extremely careful and do everything possible to conceal his identity. Eiko, curious about the seed mentioned, asked Ash to explain what it was. When he refused, the little one accessed her inherited dragon memories. The moment she understood it was something intimate, she wished she could dig a hole in the ground and disappear from embarrassment. Rebecca also announced that the first princess would soon be arriving to investigate the undead dragon attack on the city of Anselivan. The moment Sylvia heard this, she screamed and dove under the desk in terror. No one could understand why she was acting so strangely. It must have taken something truly horrific to make someone as proud as Sylvia react that way. For the next several days, Sylvia remained in a gloomy state, as though all the life had drained out of her. Everyone was quite curious, so Cosette shared a bit about First Princess Veronica. She was an ordinary person who had not been chosen as a dragon knight, but in exchange, she possessed extraordinary physical strength and exceptional swordsmanship. Having survived countless blood-soaked battles, Veronica's temperament had become ruthless beyond measure. Most recently, she had earned the moniker Iron Blood Valkyrie. With such a personality, Veronica had raised her younger sister Sylvia through methods so cruel that death would have been a mercy. The most infamous example was abandoning a very young Sylvia in the wilderness and leaving her to fend for herself. After being tortured to the point of being barely recognizable as human time and again, Sylvia was utterly terrified of her elder sister. Ash felt Sylvia needed some encouragement and went over to check on her, only to have her snap at him. She couldn't believe she was so pathetic that even Ash felt sorry for her. He was quite annoyed by her rude attitude, but didn't bother arguing. That afternoon, Cosette knew the princess had been deeply sad, frightened, and anxious for days. Tomorrow was the day the first princess would arrive, so Cosette mustered up the courage to do things that any man would dream of doing. helping Sylvia regain her spirits. Sylvia also told herself that what will come. Being afraid wouldn't change anything. The next morning, with Veronica's arrival imminent, Sylvia was still nowhere to be seen. Rebecca also didn't feel right about pressuring someone who was clearly terrified. Just when everyone thought Sylvia had given up, she appeared. Her usual composure had returned, her expression showing not a trace of fear or worry. It seemed she had truly steadied herself. Just as Ash breathed a sigh of relief, a colossal dragon warship appeared in the sky, flanked by numerous dragon knights serving as escorts. It was the first princess's personal warship, powered by a dragon fossil from 1,000 years ago. Thanks to that fossil, this iron behemoth, nearly the size of a section of the city itself, could soar through the sky. The moment the warship touched down, soldiers lined up in perfect formation, awaiting their master's descent. Through these simple details alone, anyone could tell that Veronica's status within the royal family was extraordinarily high. Veronica carried her greatsword and strode forward. The first thing she did was call out to Sylvia, the younger sister she hadn't seen in years. One would have expected a heartfelt reunion after 4 years apart. But instead, Veronica swung her sword down without mercy. Sylvia, however, dodged the lethal strike just in time. But this Sylvia was actually Cosette in disguise. Veronica knew that no matter how much her sister had matured, she couldn't possibly remain that calm. The overly confident demeanor had given Cosette away. To prevent things from escalating further, the real Sylvia stepped out from behind and greeted her sister. As predicted, Sylvia truly had no courage whatsoever when facing her elder sister. Her legs trembled with fear. "You have disgraced the royal family. Time for punishment." With those words, Veronica brought her sword crashing down. Fragments of Sylvia's clothing scattered through the air, yet not a single wound appeared on her body. Sylvia, her body exposed before everyone, collapsed to her knees to cover herself. Veronica was even more disappointed by this reaction. In a life-or-death battle, instead of finding a way to win or survive, she chose to cover her body. Your dream of becoming a dragon knight is nothing more than empty words. All talk, no action. Watching Sylvia be humiliated in front of everyone by her own sister, Ash couldn't hold back and stepped forward to speak up. He told Veronica she was going too far. The knight beside her nearly cut him down in defense. Eiko behind him also couldn't stand watching what had just unfolded. Rather than flying into a rage at being interrupted, Veronica simply told Glenn to take Ash away, then proceeded into the city to investigate the undead dragon attack. As for Ash, he wasn't dragged off to be executed or tortured. Instead, he was treated like royalty, with a girl whose assets were as large as serving bowls attending to his every need right by his side. She was a bit clumsy, but with credentials like those prominently displayed, there was no room for complaint. It wasn't until evening that Prim's team of attendants launched an operation to forcibly strip Ash of every piece of clothing. He fought back with everything he had, but under the maid's flawless technique, not a single thread remained on his body. He was then brought inside to bathe alongside Professor Angela, Rebecca, and Veronica. They were discussing the undead dragon. Only the Empire had the capability to create such a thing, but without any evidence to prove it, Veronica had no choice but to let the matter go. When Sylvia arrived shortly after, the conversation shifted to the topic of marriage. The royal family was short on heirs since the only prince, Julius, had been executed for the crime of killing a dragon. Therefore, Veronica had decided that Sylvia would marry Glenn, her most trusted knight and the late prince's close friend. As for Sylvia's dream of becoming a dragon knight, Veronica had already given up hope. The earlier display had proven that Sylvia lacked the ability. When no one dared to speak against the decision, Ash argued that Veronica was being too hasty in her judgment. Though Sylvia had indeed performed terribly and made mistakes, there were still many factors Veronica needed to observe. For all she knew, she could be destroying a potentially powerful dragon knight. Veronica's ruthless, unyielding nature had built a reputation so fearsome that enemies on the front lines would wet themselves at the mere mention of her name. But she was not an unreasonable tyrant who lorded over everyone. So after hearing Ash's sound reasoning, Veronica decided to give Sylvia one more chance. The next day, under the authority of the first princess of the kingdom, she would organize a match. The rules were simple. Rebecca and Sylvia would each lead a team with different members. The match wouldn't be an all-out brawl, as that would be far too unfair to Sylvia. Instead, both sides would play ball. Whichever team scored the most points within the time limit would win. And so the match began. Sylvia was truly lacking in tactical awareness and commanding her dragon in combat. She was so clueless that she failed to recognize the stark difference in power between the white dragon and the crimson dragon. The ball was easily snatched from her hands, and Rebecca scored effortlessly without the slightest difficulty. The next sequence showed just how outmatched Sylvia was. She chose to go head-to-head with Rebecca. When the white dragon collided with the crimson dragon's barrier, it was blasted backward, and Sylvia was thrown from its back, crashing to the ground unconscious. The result was obvious: she lost. Veronica was so disappointed that she stood up without a word and walked away. When Sylvia came to, Ash was by her side. He had been the one to carry her back. Ash tried to advise her that the white dragon was excellent but still young, and it couldn't overcome the crimson dragon at this stage. Sylvia had been so eager to prove herself to her sister that she made an unwise decision. Just then, Rebecca's voice came from outside. She wanted to speak with Ash, and there was also a visitor. It was Glenn, Veronica's most loyal knight. He came to deliver the first princess's message. She was extremely disappointed. Tomorrow, while Veronica surveyed the city, Sylvia was not to accompany her. Instead, she was to go to the cathedral, pray to Saint Valeria, and repent. The loss had shown that Sylvia lacked tactical vision. Wanting to become an arch-level dragon knight without that quality was simply impossible. She should think carefully about her dreams and choices for the future. As Glenn turned to leave, Sylvia asked him, "Do you truly want to marry me?" Glenn replied coldly that he was prepared to do so if those were the first princess's orders. Seeing Glenn's utterly indifferent attitude, Ash couldn't help but speak up. Glenn took the opportunity to remind Ash to know his place. He might have talent, given that he obtained an arch so early, but he was still far too green. Glenn was a knight so formidable that no one could subdue him except Veronica. He hadn't always been this cold. It was only after Julius's death that he changed. After the matter with Sylvia was settled, Rebecca called Ash over to deliver important information. Tomorrow, the student council would accompany the princess on her city survey. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-level criminal who had once attempted to assassinate Veronica had learned of her presence here. The student council's mission was to intercept and apprehend the criminals before they could act, and so the three of them followed Veronica, believing she would be the target. What they didn't know was that while Sylvia was sincerely praying and repenting at the cathedral, she overheard Jessica beside her praying to the heavens. "Please grant me the sacred seed of the hero Silver Knight." Sylvia didn't know how many pairs of underwear to put on her head to die of embarrassment. How could anyone say such things in a holy place? While the two were bickering, a loud crash erupted. The ceiling caved in, and rubble rained down from above. When the dust cleared, figures emerged from within. Terrorists, among them a wanted female criminal who arrived with the taunt, "Bet you can't catch me. If you can't, you're my dog." With the criminal's arrival, the people inside the cathedral naturally couldn't fight back. Everyone was taken hostage. Outside, Veronica was surveying the city when she and others noticed black smoke billowing from the cathedral. It was obvious what was happening. Ash had no idea what the right move was, but Veronica, instead of rushing to rescue anyone, decided to withdraw to the warship. Ash initially objected, arguing they should save the hostages first. But that warship was a national strategic weapon. Losing it could cost the entire city, a price that couldn't be repaid. Furthermore, Veronica had absolutely no intention of negotiating with criminals, especially terrorists who made a habit of destroying the precious piece of everyday life. Ash truly couldn't believe Veronica could be this ruthless. Once aboard the warship, they could see the scene inside the cathedral through a feed the criminals had deliberately set up. One person had been strung up, stripped of all clothing for the world to see, a deliberate humiliation of the kingdom. Everyone was confused. Why was the hostage on display not the fourth princess, but an ordinary student with an unrecognized noble title? The terrorists had planted bombs throughout the cathedral. If they all detonated simultaneously, everyone inside would die. Additionally, each time a bell rang, it meant one person had been killed. Just a heads up. If you make Big Sis here lose her temper, things will get much worse. With that, they cut the connection. Everyone was left with nothing but questions. To understand the full picture, one had to rewind a few minutes. Jessica, the woman everyone assumed was half crazy and delusional, selfish and obsessed with herself, had actually stopped Sylvia from revealing her identity as the fourth princess. Who knew what the terrorists would do with a real princess? Then Jessica stood up on her own and declared her status as a noblewoman with ties to the royal family, making herself a worthwhile hostage. And so the scene of her being stripped and strung up unfolded. Throughout the entire ordeal, Jessica showed not a single trace of fear and didn't shed a single tear. This earned Sylvia's deepest admiration and respect. An ordinary citizen displaying such nobility and strength put the actual aristocrats to shame. Even Sylvia herself felt deeply humbled. Outside, Veronica was tempted more than once to fire the warship's cannons directly at the cathedral. Ash and Rebecca, thinking quickly, devised a perfectly suited strategy. They would send Ash inside to negotiate. Iko immediately protested, calling it an extremely dangerous plan. But Ash was the most suitable person because no one knew he was a dragon knight who already possessed an arch. Once inside, Ash would stall for time while other dragon knights found a way to launch a surprise attack, subdue the terrorists, and rescue the hostages. Hearing the logic, Iko reluctantly agreed. Before leaving, Ash told Iko to quickly forge a new set of armor capable of neutralizing the bombs, then departed. When the terrorists saw Ash, they felt insulted. The negotiator was just some kid. He told them straight that Veronica was considering blasting the cathedral to rubble. It would be best to negotiate a peaceful resolution. Otherwise, they could all hold hands and meet their maker together. His words sent a wave of fear through the room. Among the hostages was a newborn on the verge of crying. Anya, an Imperial agent who had infiltrated the crowd, was forced to soothe the baby. Inside the dragon armor forge, Iko was working frantically because Ash kept urging her to hurry, or they would all die. Iko was trying her hardest, but designing a custom set of armor was nothing like grabbing a pre-made template. Navi was also buzzing around pressing her. If she didn't finish soon, Ash would die. And when Iko finally became a full dragon, she wouldn't have him to ride her anymore. Back in the cathedral, the baby was demanding to be fed, but Anya had no milk to give. Worse, they wouldn't even let her quiet it down, so the infant wailed at the top of its lungs. The woman leading the terrorists was talking to Ash when she noticed the commotion, then saw that her own dragon was hungry. So she decided to feed both Anya and the baby to her dragon alive. Ash wanted to rush forward to stop the brutal act, but was seized from behind and pinned to the ground by her henchmen. At the very moment when Anya and the baby were certain to die, Sylvia bravely stepped forward and revealed her true identity to divert the criminals' attention. But Avdotya, the leader, didn't care. She suddenly slashed downward. The strike was similar to Veronica's, leaving not a single wound on Sylvia's body, but her clothes were completely destroyed. Left without a shred of clothing, whatever courage Sylvia had painstakingly mustered vanished in an instant. She dropped to her knees, covering the parts of her body that couldn't be exposed. Avdotya sneered at the sight. Someone who dared claim royal blood yet had virtually no combat ability. You are unworthy of your family name. Those words forced Sylvia to recall every instance of her own arrogance and haughtiness. She had tried so hard to make herself strong, but what good was it when she still couldn't stand firm against her sister, and now against the enemy? Sylvia remembered the promise she had made to a childhood friend. She would become a true dragon knight. So instead of sitting there in despair, curled up in a corner, Sylvia rose to her feet and declared herself ready for battle. At that very moment, Rebecca's team successfully infiltrated the building. Under their combined strength, the foot soldiers were wiped out in an instant. When Avdotya tried to flee, Ash blocked her path. She commanded her dragon to attack, but Ash's entire body erupted with light. Iko had finished forging the armor. With the new arch, Ash swiftly dispatched the dragon. Even the bombs the enemy had prepared had absolutely no effect. True to his word, Iko had designed a cannon with extreme freezing capability. Every target hit was instantly immobilized. The bombs and Avdotya herself became nothing more than frozen works of art, stripped of all threat, and were carried outside. When the battle ended, Ash thought it was finally over, only to be ambushed by Jessica. She wanted to rip his underwear off and harvest his seed right then and there, regardless of the fact that they were in a cathedral and everyone was watching. Rebecca came up from behind and knocked her unconscious, finally freeing him. But that wasn't the end of it. That night, while Ash was sleeping, a pair of panties suddenly flew onto his face. It was, of course, none other than Jessica, who had come with the unwavering determination to claim Ash's virginity. Ash was a man of iron will. No matter how attractive Jessica was, he absolutely refused. The ordeal only ended when Iko, unable to sleep, sprang up and delivered a punch and a kick to each of them. The next morning, everyone went to meet Veronica and found Avdotya standing there. Everything from start to finish had been orchestrated by Veronica to help Sylvia grow up faster. It might sound cruel on the surface, but the truth was that no one cared for Sylvia more than Veronica. Even this extraordinary warship had been named Sylvanus, strikingly similar to Sylvia. With her mission regarding her sister complete and the aftermath of her plan cleaned up, Veronica departed. Everyone was left with a period of peace. But that peace didn't last long at all. This time, the special target was Eiko. In her dream, the little girl saw enormous tentacles coiling around her body, a voice whispering, "End it all, daughter of Avalon." When Eiko woke up, nothing seemed physically wrong, but the feelings of restlessness, unease, and fear followed her into the waking world. She truly had no idea what was happening to her. The next morning when Ash woke up, something felt off. Normally, this kid slept like the dead. You could bury her and still worry about missing the funeral. Yet today she was up unusually early. When asked about it, Eiko became evasive, as if hiding something. Ash tried to go check, but the little one stopped him. Ash figured something had happened that Eiko was afraid of being mocked for, so he promised not to laugh. He even got his hopes up that Eiko might have produced a blood crystal, an extremely valuable item that could fetch a decent price. But when he finally saw the scene on the bed, the truth hit him. It was just bedwetting, not a blood crystal. His words made Eiko feel utterly humiliated. But instead of hiding, she delivered an uppercut so powerful, it could have knocked out a heavyweight champion. Because of the morning's incident, Eiko couldn't go to school and had to stay home cleaning up the mess she'd made. Meanwhile, the academy was about to hold a training camp for outstanding students and had summoned everyone for the announcement. Ash's group showed up just to fill the numbers. Raymond was an average student, and Ash was the academy's hidden trump card, so nobody knew how strong he actually was. As expected, the names called had nothing to do with either of them. Every student selected seemed like a fitting choice, until the name Luca was announced. The entire auditorium buzzed with chatter. She was a third-year student like the student council president. Yet she hadn't attended class for 3 months and was still chosen. Even so, Luca's reputation was far from insignificant. She was the one who had defeated someone as formidable as Rebecca and claimed the title of youngest Dragon Knight. To everyone's surprise, the teacher then announced that the student council had nominated one additional spot for the training camp, and it was none other than Ash. He was initially caught off guard, but after hearing Rebecca recount everything he had accomplished, even Ash had to admit he was something. He genuinely had the potential to grow into something powerful. While the two were talking, Max burst through the door from outside with urgent news. Smoke was rising from somewhere inside the academy again. If this weren't a school, everyone would have assumed some idiot had set off fireworks indoors. When they rushed inside, they found a girl lying in a coffin. They thought someone had died, but then she suddenly sat up. Coincidentally, it was Luca. She wasn't an ordinary human but a spirit. Her people were deeply knowledgeable about herbs, and the large plume of smoke from earlier was nothing more than incense. As for the coffin, it might have looked creepy, but it was actually a premium-grade bed. Someone like Ash could sell every last thing he owned and still not afford one. After hearing Luca's explanation, Jessica wanted to smash a stick against her backside. Thankfully, Rebecca was there. She also knew Luca and stepped in to protect her just in time. Thanks to this meeting, everyone learned the reason Luca hadn't been attending class. For some unknown reason, her pal refused to let her touch it. This had been going on for 3 months, and Luca had no idea how to fix it. If a solution wasn't found, the dragon's life would be as good as over. This would likely become one of the most urgent matters the student council needed to address. That evening after school, Ash brought back some of the pastries Eiko loved. The little one was so excited she leaped out and threw her arms around him. Watching Eiko happily munch on the treats, Ash thought her mood had improved. But then, tears suddenly began to fall. Since that morning, Eiko had been putting on a brave face, but the nightmare had been all too real. So real that Eiko felt as though she had encountered the monster a very long time ago. It was an undead dragon similar to the one that had attacked the city, but with 9 eyes and a far more overwhelming aura of evil. Eiko told Ash about her nightmare, hoping it would make her feel better. But that night, she still couldn't sleep and remained anxious. So Ash suddenly got up and walked over to Eiko's bed. Before she knew it, he had lain down beside her and told her to scoot over a bit. When he was little, Ash would always find someone to sleep next to whenever he had nightmares. The method was incredibly effective, so tonight would surely be fine. Just as Eiko was gazing at Ash with sparkling, moved eyes, he added, "If you don't have nightmares tonight, you probably won't wet the bed either." Eiko was so furious that she forgot all about her fear and kicked him square in the throat. He had deliberately provoked her. and it seemed to have worked wonders. The next morning, Iko went to class and slept like a log as usual. Ash was quite pleased that the little one had finally returned to normal. Raymond, sitting beside him, was genuinely impressed. Ash really knew how to bridge the gap between species. He wondered if they'd merge when Iko grew up. Your head has nothing in it besides sex and more sex. Keep this up and you'll never amount to anything. While basking in this happy moment, Ash spotted Luca and followed her into the dragon stable where her pal, the dragon that refused its master's touch, was being kept. Luca always tried to find a way to reconnect and communicate with her pal, but every single time, the moment the dragon let out a threatening roar, she immediately recalled being thrown from its back and fled in terror. Watching that scene, Ash felt deeply pained and empathetic. Before Iko appeared, he had suffered similarly, so he went to Rebecca to find a way to help. After thinking for a moment, Rebecca suggested that Ash try riding it. The last time he rode the undead dragon, he had seen its emotions and memories. If he rode Luca's pal, perhaps he could discover the real reason their bond had deteriorated. Ash thought it was a solid plan, but before attempting it, he wanted Luca to try communicating with her dragon one more time. Convincing Luca was somewhat difficult because the moment she laid eyes on Iko, she pounced like an animal in heat, groping the little one all over. Only after she'd had her fill did Luca have the composure to face her dragon. The result was the same as before. Luca turned and left the moment the dragon roared. Ash immediately went in himself. The dragon rejected not only Luca but Ash as well. It smashed the stable to pieces with its tail, then leaped into the air and opened its jaws to charge up energy. By the time Ash saw what was happening, it was already too late. He had no choice but to brace himself and take the dangerous hit head-on. Thankfully, his armor's protection was enough to keep him alive, but he had no strength left. His vision gradually blurred, and he lost consciousness. When Ash came to, he felt terrible that the plan had failed, and that he hadn't been able to ride the dragon, but no one else saw it that way. The fact that Ash was unharmed was already a stroke of enormous luck. Perhaps they would have to wait until the training camp for a chance to help Luca and her dragon reconcile. To make sure everything would go smoothly as planned, Ash paid another visit to Luca's home. Iko came along to prevent any unsavory rumors about the meeting. Ash said nothing beyond encouraging Luca to join the training camp. This would be an opportunity for the two of them to reconnect. No matter what, the bond between rider and dragon must not be severed, or the dragon would certainly be in danger. Unlike Ash, Iko bluntly criticized Luca for being too weak and unable to do anything when her pal was in trouble. Ash tried to intervene and got cursed at too. Say one more word and I'll beat you senseless. Want me to drop kick you in the mouth? While the two bickered, Luca watched them with a mix of admiration and sadness. She remembered the days she spent with her dragon, when things were just as warm and lively. She couldn't understand how it had all gone wrong. While the academy prepared for the training camp, the people from the Empire weren't sitting idle either. Anya had long since infiltrated the city. Through various jobs and disguises, she had always been able to observe Ash and Iko from a distance. This time, Anya would tag along as a cook preparing meals for the students. Meanwhile, the mysterious man she revered was preparing a terrible plan. When the appointed time came, everyone set off together for the training grounds. Luca would fly with Rebecca. Ash flew with Max, who was genuinely terrified that Ash would try to ride his dragon, so his warning was crystal clear. Iko flew with Sylvia. Iko apparently shared a similar ability with her trainer, as she could not only chat comfortably with the white dragon but also easily command it. No matter how many times Sylvia told the dragon not to listen, it obeyed everything Iko said without question. Upon arriving at the training grounds, everyone didn't start right away but rested for a day. Rebecca organized a free swim for everyone, and so began a splendid display of attractive bodies. The boys could freely ogle the girls without worrying about getting a black eye. Iko was free to play as she pleased. Who would dare pick a fight with a lowly protected by every law in the book? Ash, however, had an entirely different fate. Before he could do anything, Jessica appeared out of nowhere and dragged him away. Maybe you're tired of shooting tadpoles in bed. Today, let's go into the forest for a change of scenery. On the other side, when Rebecca appeared, she drew everyone's attention as well. With a chest like a pair of coconuts, it would be strange not to stare. Next came Sylvia. Though she was no longer as timid or easily frightened as before, wearing something this revealing was still completely foreign to her. While she stood there self-consciously, Iko came flying in on the white dragon. Seeing that Jessica had kidnapped her slave Ash, The little one refused to stand for it, and chased after them with the white dragon. Sylvia, hearing the news, wasn't about to sit on the sidelines either. And so an earth-shaking pursuit tore through the entire forest. It wasn't until nightfall that Ash, wrung out like a shirt fresh from a washing machine on maximum spin cycle, finally made it back to his room. But then he caught sight of Luca wandering along the path. So instead of going inside, he decided to follow her. Luca walked deep into the forest where her dragon was resting. She truly didn't want things to be this way and couldn't understand how they had ended up like this. It was baffling. She had every intention of listening and helping her companion through this difficulty, but the dragon stubbornly refused. Ash, watching from outside, couldn't take it anymore. Sweet talk and gentle coaxing had been used plenty. If the dragon wouldn't sit down and communicate properly, then today it would become boiled dragon. Hearing Ash's words, the dragon flew into a rage and attacked. He knew that without armor, a single swipe would be enough to send him to an early grave at a very young age. Ash carefully dodged the dragon's earth-shattering strikes while provoking and luring it towards slippery, muddy terrain. The moment it lost its footing and stumbled, Ash leaped onto its back with the intent to link emotions and memories. But the dragon resisted violently, using magic to blast Ash off its back. The blow was so severe that he lost consciousness instantly, his body entering a critical state where death could come at any moment. Anya, watching from above, recalled the incident at the cliff. She decided to step in and help, repaying the debt so that neither owed the other anything. In his coma, Ash saw Navi once again, and beside her was a small dragon. It was Luca's pal. The dragon bore no ill will. It simply wanted Luca to be the only person who ever sat on its back. The rejection was its way of protecting her. Among Luca's people, there existed a skill called dragon dance, an extremely complex combat technique. Luca had failed during practice and fallen from the dragon's back, developing a deep fear afterward. The dragon, despite its large frame, was actually very young and didn't understand the situation. All it knew was that its master was afraid of it when riding, so it stopped letting Luca come close. That was the only way it knew how to protect its master. But if this continued, in just 5 more days, the dragon would die. So the moment Ash woke up, despite being quite startled to find Luca lying naked on his bed, he didn't forget to relay the crucial information. Thanks to it, Luca finally knew where to begin solving the problem. Shortly after, Iko's group arrived as well. The little one threw herself at him, hugging him so tightly it felt like she was trying to strangle him out of worry. Ash had been unconscious for 5 straight days, leaving Iko unable to eat or sleep properly. Seeing him awake and in one piece finally eased her mind a little. While everyone was talking, Luca appeared outside again, her face filled with extreme urgency. She reported that the dragon was nowhere to be found. It had vanished without a trace, and the astral flow between them had been completely severed. Luca truly had no idea how to find it. After hearing this, Rebecca recalled the Willingham Mausoleum. The training grounds were very close to that location. The mausoleum was tied to a story about a dragon named Nuada. It and its master had once lived happily together. But when Nuada witnessed its master falling gravely ill and growing weaker by the day, it voluntarily severed their bond because it didn't want her to see its own decline and eventual death. What Nuada didn't know was that its master recovered some time later. The dragon had retreated into a desolate mausoleum where no one would know or find it, and there it died, waiting for its master in the next world. This story transformed the gloomy Willingham Mausoleum into a deeply sacred place, and also a site where young dragons went to die. Whether Luca's dragon shared the same mindset as Nuada was anyone's guess. To prevent the worst-case scenario, Rebecca wanted to postpone the celebration banquet for the successful training camp and mobilize the students for a large-scale search around the mausoleum. Ash disagreed with this decision. After 5 days of training, everyone was completely exhausted. He couldn't ask them to keep working. But the student council members also couldn't all be absent, as that would easily cause panic. So Rebecca stayed behind to host the banquet while Ash and the other 3 headed straight for the mausoleum. The moment they arrived at Willingham, they sensed danger closing in. Before the group had even gotten there, Milgaus from the Empire had already been lying in wait. He used the same ritual as before to summon undead dragons for battle, with the goal of killing both Iko and Ash, whom he called the Knight and Daughter of Avalon. Dark clouds rolled across the sky above, crackling with ominous lightning that radiated nothing but malice. When the mausoleum doors officially opened, they saw undead dragons charging out at them from within. Sylvia was the first victim they targeted. Tentacles from the creatures seized her like some depraved old man, groping every spot that any man would envy. Fortunately, her dragon reacted in time and slaughtered the enemies in one sweep, rescuing its master. Looking behind them, they saw a considerable number of monsters also heading toward the students. These young knights had just endured an exhausting training camp, but they were not afraid. They needed a real battle as a baptism to prove their growth. Under Rebecca's command, the inexperienced students began forming defensive formations and launching attacks against the monsters. Things looked promising at first. Energy blasts fired at precisely the right moment and target, obliterating row after row of undead dragons. But the enemy's numbers were simply overwhelming. The students fought from fiery determination all the way to complete exhaustion. Yet the enemy showed no sign of diminishing. The creatures kept advancing, capturing several female students and stripping them in a display that was as appalling as it was eye-catching. Rebecca gathered an enormous amount of power from above and hurled her lance forward. It tore through the undead formation and eliminated a significant number of targets, but it still wasn't enough to turn the tide. Inside the cave, Sylvia and the dragons led the group deeper. The undead monsters continued pouring out endlessly. If this kept up, total exhaustion and defeat were inevitable. So Ash asked Eiko to grant him the arch. But there was a major problem. His weakened condition after being injured meant Ash could no longer withstand the pressure of the battle armor. Eiko would have to personally enter the dragon armor forge and create a new set. Time was critical, so Eiko couldn't search for templates and piece them together like before. She asked Navi for help. Navi agreed, but on one condition. Someday, Eiko must design an original set of armor for Ash. This was equivalent to swearing to devote her body and soul to Ash, which made Eiko extremely anxious. But when she heard how dire Ash's situation was, she accepted without hesitation. Outside, Ash's group had come face to face with Milgauss. He had awakened Nuada to fight them. Though it was merely a young dragon, its power was far from weak. It alone was enough to give Sylvia an incredibly difficult time, leaving her with no choice but to dodge defensively. On another front, Nuada lashed out its tentacles and seized Luca. Eiko, who had been shielded in Ash's arms, was also pulled away. The creature continued its depraved groping. Ash saw the scene and screamed in fury. Thankfully, at that moment, Eiko regained consciousness and let out a powerful shout. A massive magic circle materialized, its power so overwhelming that it shattered the tentacles and simultaneously armed Ash with the new arch. In a flash, he charged forward and punched Milgauss with tremendous force. Though Milgauss managed to block, he was still driven back a considerable distance. Eiko called out from below, warning that this armor was designed for defense and magical offense. Don't go charging in for close combat, or you'll get kicked in the crotch. So Ash summoned magical shields. From their centers, bizarre beams of light shot forth, petrifying every target they struck. After finishing off the undead dragons, the shield surged toward Milgauss, but he was faster, swinging his greatsword in a circular arc that shattered all 4 shields before lunging at Ash and sending him flying. The blow destroyed the newly equipped armor, leaving only a single gauntlet, but that was enough. Milgauss charged in again with full confidence, unaware that Ash still had 1 shield remaining. It fired a petrifying beam that turned his hand to stone. Ash seized the opening and punched Milgauss backward. The hit drove him to the brink of madness, and he was about to attack again when Sylvia's group, having dealt with Nuada, arrived as reinforcements. Smart villains don't waste time showboating, and Milgauss was the perfect example. Without another word, he tore off his petrified hand and leaped off the cliff to escape, leaving everyone stunned. While tracking Milgauss, the group saw the students locked in fierce battle. Rushing to their aid was impossible since the white dragon was injured and spent. Everyone present was giving it their all. So who wasn't truly trying? Luca realized it was herself. She grabbed Ash and pulled him off the cliff with her, because she felt that as long as Ash was by her side, there was nothing to fear. Luca began channeling the astral flow to connect with her dragon, sending it a message that she would never be afraid of anything again as long as they fought together. The dragon received its master's call and came tearing through the air at breakneck speed. Rebecca, seeing a streak of light hurtling toward them from afar, was initially worried it was enemy reinforcements, only to discover it was Luca and her dragon. Luca told Ash to hold tight to the dragon's back, then stood upright on it. The dragon shot straight upward at a 90-degree angle. From there, Luca let herself fall from the dragon's back. The energy radiating from both of them formed a massive magical barrier across the sky. When the aerial circuit was complete and Luca returned to the dragon's back, The first movement of the dragon dance was finished. It unleashed green energy particles that bombarded in every direction. Every undead that made contact with the particles disintegrated on the spot. The enemy's overwhelming numbers were wiped out by Luca in mere moments. Rebecca remarked with admiration that the legendary demon dance truly lived up to its name. The reputation of the Icbladian people had been flawlessly proven by Luca. After the incident, Sylvia received a letter from her father, the reigning king and head of the Lautremont family. He informed her about the upcoming Continental Congress and told her that her attendance was mandatory this time. He also wanted her to bring Ash and Eiko to be presented before him. And so a new journey began. The Continental Congress, as its full name implied, was a gathering of national leaders to discuss the region's development over the next 5 years. The host of each Congress rotated in a cycle, with a different leader presiding each time. It was now the Lautremont royal family's turn to host. The venue was the royal capital of the Kingdom of Fontaine, a city many times larger than the one where Ash attended school. If he had to compare, the area where the academy was located was nothing more than a small village within the capital. As he described it, Fontaine came into view. Even from above, the sheer scale, grandeur, and magnificence of the city were breathtaking. It truly lived up to its reputation as the capital of one of the most powerful nations in the region. Upon entering the royal palace, Sylvia intended to arrange accommodations for Ash, but a servant informed her that she absolutely had to see the king first. So she had to leave, entrusting Ash and Eiko to her serious attendant Frietta. Frietta led them to Veronica's chambers, since she was someone Ash knew and could provide assistance during their stay. Along the way, Ash noticed a considerable number of knights on duty. Judging by the formation, not even a fly could get through. That was only natural. The safety of national leaders was no laughing matter. When they slid open the door to Veronica's room, a torrent of water suddenly came crashing toward them, soaking everyone's clothes. The culprit was Prim, the clumsy maid who was utterly useless at everything except having a body that made jaws drop. To make matters worse, she had stripped off her maid uniform to work more freely. Frietta saw the scene and nearly exploded but held herself back because Ash was present. Prim later brought clothes for Eiko and Frietta to change into, and Ash also had a spare set. Just as Frietta was about to leave after handing Ash over to Prim, another unbearable moment occurred. Prim, whether intentionally or accidentally, flipped out Frietta's skirt, revealing a bare backside with no protective underwear. The reason being that her panties were already soaked, so she had nothing left to wear. Ash saw the scene and tried desperately to chant every mental mantra he knew to keep things from rising, but to no avail. Later that evening, Eiko gazed at the glittering city lights and stood there mesmerized. Ash knew the little one wanted to go out, so he took her for a stroll through the streets with Prim tagging along to help. Under Eiko's hyperactive energy and terrifying spending power, Prim was quickly defeated and collapsed in a heap. After playing around for a while, Eiko found her favorite bakery. While waiting for the pastries, Eiko noticed Ash staring at the passing couples with a longing look in his eyes, like a starving dog. It took a moment before Eiko's little brain figured out that Ash also yearned to go on a date. So she took the initiative and held his hand. But when they saw a couple kissing, both of them turned away at the same time. As for Sylvia, her meeting with her father went without any issues. Paladin sounded imposing by name but truly adored his daughter. In front of Sylvia, he had none of the bearing of a king. He also explained that Veronica had been the one to suggest Sylvia's participation in the Continental Congress. Furthermore, bringing Ash here was preparation for the future. Building a strong relationship now meant the nation would gain another powerful dragon knight down the road. So the very next day, everyone dressed in their finest to meet the king. Sylvia wore a ceremonial outfit that was beyond reproach. With her assets on display like that, no one could possibly look away. Ash merely complimented Sylvia once, and it was enough to make Eiko furious enough to want to punch him in the family jewels. Shortly after, Ash met Paladin in person. The king made no attempt to hide his intention to bestow upon Ash the title of Dragonar, a position that only dragon riders like Sylvia could attain. But considering the value and everything that Eiko represented, he deemed it entirely deserved. The investiture ceremony was completed swiftly. Everyone sat down at the banquet table to celebrate, and the conversation naturally turned to the Congress. This year, the leader of the empire would not be attending. He claimed illness, though no one could be sure if it was real or an excuse. To be safe, Paladin decided to host a masquerade ball the following day, where everyone could mingle freely without asking about origins, status, or power. It would be the perfect opportunity to probe for information. While the conversation was pleasant, Paladin suddenly turned menacing and asked Ash if he had any kind of relationship with his daughter. Best not, or he would personally castrate him and have several large, muscular men use 30-centimeter batons to discipline his backside. As everyone had feared, although the Emperor didn't come in person, he had sent Klaus, a military aristocrat, along with Milgaus. They brought with them a massive machine of unknown purpose, but their target was clear: capture Eiko. Tomorrow would be when they struck. In the dead of night, while everyone slept, Sylvia made her way to the dragon mausoleum. Ever since the first encounter, she had felt a powerful sense of familiarity with the undead dragon. After thinking long and hard, she finally remembered. It was Mordred, Julius's former pal. She wanted to visit the mausoleum to confirm whether its remains were still there. To her surprise, Veronica had also come. Sylvia didn't hesitate to share her theory about everything, from the undead dragon incident to the Willingham mausoleum. She believed that Milgaus was actually Julius. Veronica stood frozen after hearing this, but it made terrifyingly good sense. According to her investigations, the remains of numerous dragons from across the kingdom had been stolen, Mordred included. However, this information absolutely could not be leaked. If it got out, the kingdom would once again be thrown into turmoil and plunged back into war. Despite all the worry, the masquerade ball the next day was truly important. She and everyone else had to go back and prepare for it. Cosette was technically a servant, but more like a friend. She always knew how worried Sylvia was and what enormous pressures she was carrying. Every time the princess felt down, Cosette would play the role of the lucky maid who got to knead the dough for her master. Sylvia truly didn't know how to resist. She felt embarrassed and wanted to refuse, but the comfort it brought was more euphoric than any drug. So Sylvia surrendered helplessly. Surely many of you gentlemen out there are asking why that person wasn't you. After Cosette finished the massage, Sylvia found herself gravitating toward Ash as if by instinct. He always knew how to comfort others, making their worries fade away with every conversation. After a while, Sylvia finally brought up the issue of her brother Julius. The man who was supposed to have been executed for killing a dragon was apparently still alive. Though not entirely certain, it was more than likely true. From her father's attitude to the resurrection of Mordred's remains, too many things pointed to someone no one else could be but Julius. She truly wanted to know why her father had kept it from her. Ash thought for a moment, then shared how his own father had abandoned his mother and 3 siblings when he was young. For many years, he never brought it up and kept it buried inside. It wasn't until he couldn't hold it in any longer that he asked his mother, and she promised to explain everything when Ash was truly grown up. Sylvia should do the same rather than torturing herself by hiding everything and bottling it up. It would be best to simply ask the king directly. Just as Sylvia felt that Ash's words were absolutely right, a bolt of lightning crashed down. Terrified, she threw herself into Ash's arms. Thanks to that, he got a generous view of 2 melons of considerable size. Ash tried to shift his body to escape the awkward position, but he only managed to shift upward, making the situation completely inescapable. Just as they were about to cross the line, Cosette's voice came from outside as a reminder, and so what was about to happen was called off entirely. Ash stood there in a daze for a moment before pulling himself together. He went around looking for Eiko to check on her preparations, but couldn't find the little one anywhere. What Ash didn't know was that just minutes earlier, Eiko had been throwing a royal tantrum, demanding that Prim find her the most luxurious and elegant outfit possible. She wanted a noble dragon like herself to look absolutely dazzling and outshine every lowly human. With standards that impossibly high, Eiko had tried on quite a few beautiful outfits, but rejected every single one with a shake of her head. While searching for new clothes, Eiko reminded Prim that the outfit had to be prettier than Sylvia's. That woman had been stealing Ash away from her lately, and it was really getting on her nerves. Prim didn't see anything unusual about the situation. Eiko was a dragon and Ash was a human. Sooner or later, he would find someone he liked, get married, and have children. Eiko knew this was only natural, but her heart still ached. She ran out, ignoring Prim chasing after her and calling her name. Eiko kept running through the castle until she no longer knew where she was. Right then, she spotted Anya along with a group of suspicious figures preparing something. She tried to slip away, but Prim's voice echoed from behind. The hostile group heard it too and rushed to attack. Eiko warned Prim multiple times, but to no avail. She had no choice but to fight them off herself to protect Prim. Anya, seeing that Eiko was too powerful for hand-to-hand combat, pulled out a gun and fired. Back with Ash, he had already informed Cosette that Eiko and Prim were nowhere to be found. The banquet was about to start, so all he could do was leave the search to Cosette. At the ball, Ash and Sylvia danced together, but he couldn't focus and kept staring toward the Empire's delegation, where Milgaus's figure lingered among them. Sylvia had to repeatedly remind him not to worry since there was nothing they could do in the current situation. After they finished dancing, Sylvia invited Milgaus to dance as a way to probe him. He truly knew the kingdom's traditional dance. More and more evidence pointed to her brother Julius, making it impossible for Sylvia not to be suspicious. When the dance ended, Cosette returned with Prim, but Eiko was nowhere to be seen. Prim confessed about her careless words, and Sylvia was furious when she heard everything. Eiko was indeed a dragon, but her awareness and thoughts were no different from a human's. That was precisely why she had been born in human form. How could anyone speak so thoughtlessly? Despite her fury, the pressing issue was Eiko's whereabouts. According to Prim, the little one had been captured at the abandoned castle, and Anya had been spotted during the incident. Ash immediately thought of Milgaus and wanted to confront him. Sylvia, keeping her composure, stopped him. Even if they confronted him, nothing would come of it. They should think about where they would hide Eiko if they were in his shoes, especially while the banquet was still underway. The only answer was aboard Klaus's ship. Sure enough, Eiko was truly there, confined inside the Empire's latest technological device. They intended to use Millennium energy to forcefully transform Eiko into a mindless, powerful dragon to devastate the royal capital. After several energy transmissions that produced nothing but agonizing pain for Eiko, they decided to pull the lever all the way and unleash every last bit of available energy. The machine quickly showed new developments, but instead of yielding positive results, it spiraled out of control, ignoring all commands. Even the shutdown order was completely useless. Eiko's containment pod suddenly exploded. She had absorbed all the energy entirely, and her entire body radiated a divine golden light. In the distance, the moment Ash noticed activity on the ship, his arm flared with searing pain. The sacred dragon mark burned so intensely it incinerated his sleeve. Simultaneously, a colossal egg appeared in the sky, emitting brilliant white light. Ash wondered if Eiko was inside it. The closer he got to the egg, the stranger things became. Sylvia's white dragon grew increasingly resistant, radiating an intense refusal to continue. Even Sylvia herself couldn't sense what was happening, but she heeded Ash's warning and dismounted. The moment its master was safe, the white dragon, along with numerous other dragons so powerful they had earned the rank of master, worthy of the Dragonar title, all flew straight toward the egg in unison. They assumed postures of submission, as if they were slaves welcoming a great sovereign. When a crack appeared on the egg, a vivid crimson eye peered through. More pieces fell away to reveal a dragon with pale gray limbs and enormous white wings that radiated an aura of the divine. Setting everything else aside, the sheer physical form alone made it clear that this newborn dragon was extraordinarily powerful. The other master-level dragons before it were nothing more than insects by comparison. Through the sacred dragon mark, Ash could feel that this transcendent dragon was indeed Eiko. Inside the castle, the rebellion of the master-level dragons had caught Veronica's attention. She was about to organize a defense when Klaus, who had been lurking in the background orchestrating everything, began acting as if he knew nothing, expressing shock that some kind of monster was trampling his state-of-the-art warship. Paladin stepped forward to explain that even he knew nothing about this incident, and that it was merely an unforeseen accident. But how could the assembled guests risk their lives based on a few hollow words from Paladin? A piercing scream rang out, and everyone scattered like a disturbed beehive, pouring out through the exit. Glenn tried to take Veronica to safety, but she refused because Milgaus was right here. She desperately wanted to know if the person before her was truly her brother. When the man removed his mask, it was indeed the familiar face of Julius, but he denied it. His true name was Mordred, Julius's former pal. He was no ordinary dragon, but a descendant of the Shadow Kingdom of Nihilania, one of the nations so powerful it had once waged war against the sacred nation of Avalon. How he and his kingdom had ended up in their current state was unclear. He had been forced to return as a dragon bound by contract to a human. The relationship between dragon and knight was a fusion of energy flows that strengthened both sides. Mordred refused to accept this as an equal partnership. He wanted to enslave humanity. Julius was the one who had recognized his dark intentions and didn't hesitate to kill Mordred. But everything had still ended in failure. Julius was convicted of his crime and had his body taken over. With the full truth now clear, Glenn charged forward in a rage. But with a single wave of his hand, Mordred sent him flying. Veronica rushed in as well but posed no threat whatsoever. He transformed into a dense cloud of smoke that engulfed her, trapping her in an illusion. When she came to, Julius had returned to his normal state. He delivered grim news. Mordred appeared to have successfully taken over Eiko's body. The dragon that had originally been sacred and divine was now, under Mordred's corruption, twisted into something profoundly dark and evil. Having seized control, Mordred went to confront Navi. He knew she was the Dragways, the guide who bestowed wisdom and knowledge upon dragonkind. He wanted that power. But Navi refused to acknowledge the path and vision of the Shadow Kingdom of Nahalania. The two would likely have their own battle within the Dragon Armor Forge. Moments later, it seemed Navi had driven Mordred out of the forge. She came to inform Eiko that to defeat him, the previous arch sets lacked sufficient power. Ash needed an original battle armor. Eiko was hesitant, unsure if she could pull it off. But when she heard that Ash was fighting for his life outside, she stopped overthinking. Allies from the academy who had received word also rushed in to help. They used various spells to try to corner Mordred, but it was futile. A casual display of his strength was enough to shatter their efforts. Since defeating him head-on wasn't working, they switched tactics to give Ash a chance to leap down and mount Mordred. Rebecca launched a powerful strike from afar, forcing him to raise a hand to block. The lance pierced straight through his palm. While Mordred was dealing with the wound, Ash jumped, but Mordred reacted just as quickly, looking up and concentrating a blast of energy aimed directly at Ash. The speed was so overwhelming that no one on the scene could react in time. Just as the beam was about to swallow Ash, he was pulled into another dimension. It was like a vast universe filled with brilliant stars, and somewhere in the distance echoed Eiko's voice as she gathered every last piece of material to forge the battle armor. When Ash regained consciousness, the beam before him had been stopped by an impenetrable shield. It could not advance even a fraction of an inch. The voices of Eiko and Navi rang out simultaneously, reminding him that this was an original arch. Due to the time pressure, it hadn't been fully completed, but it would be enough. Understanding their message, Ash chanted the incantation to summon the holy sword. With the divine weapon in hand, he easily cleaved Mordred's destructive beam in two. Mordred knew he was about to be struck and threatened that if Ash did so, the heir of Avalon would surely die as well. Ash was well aware of that, but more importantly, he knew Eiko's weak point. Following that line of thought, he swung the sword and struck directly at Eiko's horn. Mordred's evil spirit, like compressed air, came gushing out in a torrent. Eiko's colossal body was also released from the transformation, and she returned safely into Ash's arms. The strain from the armor caused Ash to lose consciousness, and it took some time before he came to. According to the reports, Mordred had not perished. His spirit had fled to the east. Many people in that direction would suffer at the hands of this wicked dragon in the future. But that was no longer Ash's concern. It was a matter for the royal family to handle. After the briefing, everyone stepped outside to give Ash and Eiko some privacy. Ash swore that no matter what happened, he would always be Eiko's knight. But Eiko didn't want their relationship to remain that simple. She wanted something more. Of course, going further without being careful would mean a silver band on the finger, and a lifetime of responsibility that would wear anyone out.